We are here today to talk about harnessing the product power. Obviously, we've got Dan here who's going to talk a little bit about some of the key examples that we've got in market right now that we can talk through, and just kind of share his kind of knowledge with you all. And the first area is kind of looking into how the construct of the DVM and how it's helping partners by simplifying the complexity and also enabling that success for scaling as well. So Dan, would you like to talk a little bit around the DVM for us?
Absolutely. So where I'd like to kind of kick off this chat is around our ethos in delivery of how we onboard customers to the DVM. So one of the big things we concentrate on is onboarding you to the DVM, not necessarily to the content provider or the reseller. So what I mean by that is you're onboarding to our product. You're not necessarily integrating one end to the other. And throughout this kind of conversation, we'll go through why that's important and why that ethos is ingrained within the team to make sure that's what we achieve as we work with you. So I think I'm quite excited by this slide for a number of reasons. I think that the first one is Continente is a retailer and Telenet Belgium is a telco. But the exciting thing is they onboarded to Bango using the exact same API, which just goes to show kind of whether you're a retailer, a banker, a telco, it doesn't really matter. You can use the DVM to get where you want to get to and give your customers what they're looking for. But the other exciting thing here is on the left-hand side, Disney Plus was Continente's first launch through Bango, and that took 8 weeks, which a number in itself is, I believe, quite impressive to launch a successful offer to the market in a fairly short amount of time. But the element on the right was this wasn't Telenet's first launch, but the content provider's the same, the Bango product remains the same. But as you can see here, the time has essentially halved from the first launch to the second launch. And I think that's hopefully a good showcase of the power of what the DVM could bring you when you want to launch more than one customer.
So the content, just talking about the Continente example here, a little bit more detail. So that their ambition in the market was they wanted to do a Christmas offer, right? They wanted to get something live and launched in quite an aggressive timeline, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that kind of approach from a retailer to launch a product like this?
Yeah, so as you'd expect from a retailer, I think the offer placement was perfect. It's often a part of the market retailers are exceptionally good at. And yeah, the goal for us was a Christmas launch, and we achieved that, which was great, and the offer was really successful. And actually working with retailers for us is very similar to working with telcos because the product remains the same. So we don't have to adapt too much in our style or approach, depending on the kind of the background the reseller comes from.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, and it's a great call out as well that the platform is reseller agnostic. We like to say so.
Yes,
it's the same for a retailer, it's the same as for a telco, same for a bank, which really helps in the market with this kind of standardization. That the DVM is why it's there, and we will touch on this a little bit more as we go through as well, I imagine.
Yes, exactly.
So talking a little bit more into the technical side of things. So the approach that Bango kind of goes through, and the way that you kind of construct this with our partners. Can you give a little more detail and color into that for us, Dan?
Absolutely. So I think something I'm really proud of and something we've worked hard as a business to achieve is the breadth and transparency of our documentation. So you can go to the link shown on the screen and view all of our APIs across the DVM ecosystem. And I'll get on to shortly around some supplementary information we share as part of the onboarding experience as well. But we get a lot of feedback from our customers that our documentation is easy to understand and our APIs are easy to understand. And I think that's one of almost the unsaid, but one of the key pieces of information which really helps smooth out the onboarding process and often overlooked by a lot of APIs we see in the market. And I think the good news is you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to developer.bangor.info right now, sign up to Sandbox access using the form shown on the screen, and you can play around with the APIs yourself, see how easy they are to use, and I guess I can kind of put my money where my mouth is, and you can let me know how easy you find the APIs and interfaces to use.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, the sandbox as well, is because of the we've kind of created a subscription product. It's called Bango Music, isn't it? And it's a really good way of kind of testing and trying out our APIs for yourself and making sure the integration works. And yeah, it's a really great call out to talk about a bit more into it.
Absolutely.
We talk a little bit around high-level design in our approach with onboarding as well. So I think it'd be great for you to give a bit more information on that area as well, Dan.
Yeah, so a big part of the onboarding journey for our partners is a high-level design, and essentially what the high-level design shows is exactly what our DVM offers you. So all the use cases that you may need in the market, and I think one of the key messages I really wanted to get across today in here is our product is excellent, but you're also buying into the DVM ecosystem, which includes knowledge of hundreds of integrations. And the HLD and our documentation has kind of evolved over the years based on our experience. And we kind of like, when you join the Bango ecosystem, we can share that experience with you and help you understand the landscape of the bundling market in a lot more detail, but also try and set you up for success as you move through your integration journey.
I mean, even just yourself, right? 12 years experience in knowing how this stuff works.
Yes.
Can't imagine, you know, the amount of years of experience with everyone, you know, the 300 strong team that we've got here at Bango.
Absolutely.
So yeah, really,
so
really good.
What do you think, Ben? Does this kind of line up to what you're seeing in the market in terms of the market needs?
Yeah, I think from my side, you know, we're seeing this kind of evolution happen. It is already happening. So a lot of these telcos who are the predominant bundlers out there are launching 1-2 partners. I'd say in the last couple of years they were focusing on one, but obviously this kind of emergence now, and we're seeing from the conversations we're having as well, they're wanting 5, 10, 15 content provider launches. So there is this kind of, I think, this market need where consumers are wanting more choice. Consumers are wanting all the subscriptions they want in that one place. And, you know, we're here to help with that journey as well. So it's, yeah, very much aligned.
Perfect. Great to hear.
So I think let's dig into some actual real life examples. I think this will be really useful for the audience to see just how some connections can be quite more, you know, on the simpler side, but then also on the other side, you know, with the kind of AAA content providers, as we call them, they can be really quite a heavy lift, right? And trying to do that. So I think it'd be really good to talk a little bit more about this, Dan. Absolutely,
let's do it. So I think a trend we've definitely seen emerging over the last 1 to 2 years is our kind of resale partners, telcos in particular, wanting to launch with more than one content provider. And I think, what does that look like in reality? It's, in this example, it's 5 different interfaces, 5 different sets of logic, 5 different sets of authentication, and even one can be pretty complex. So what I'd like to quickly show you is a real life example, and purposely redacted any names for fairness. But this particular partner requires 7 separate APIs, so not just API methods or use cases, but actual APIs across their ecosystem to launch a bundle service. And that's a mix of synchronous APIs, that's a mix of asynchronous APIs through polling in either direction, and quite complex authentication, which is often not spoke about, and also fairly complex logic around kind of event management and date calculations and things like that. So a lot of the complexity actually comes about from behind the scenes of the APIs, not necessarily the APIs themselves. And that's obviously the bits you can't see until you start digging and implementing.
Yeah, it looks like quite a complex beast. Just one here, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we can comfortably say it's complex because we've done a lot of these, so we know it's complex. But we're pretty used to that complexity now, and yeah, fairly comfortable with it. So,
I imagine this is what it looks like without a DVM product interface. So should we have a look what it looks like with the DVM?
yeah, let's do it. Cool. So this is the exact same content provider, but now the DVM has neatly slotted between the reseller and the subscription service. And what you can see here is we've essentially converted a pretty complex integration into something really quite simple. And it uses the APIs you can browse to, hopefully after this, so you can listen to the rest and play around with. But yeah, it completely extracts the logic complexity, the API complexity, the authentication complexity. And just a reminder, this is just one content provider. So if you can imagine doing this with 5, 10, 15, you can imagine how the technical complexity and just managing that within your own system can really start to expand.
Well, we can kind of show an example here, can't we? Now of kind of
Yeah,
we
it's
back to
as
the
if we
example of the five,
prepared
right?
these earlier, Ben.
I know, isn't it just?
So it's so what you're seeing on the left is the original slide we showed, and now on the right is kind of the one with the DVM in place, and it's that real connect once mentality. And just a reminder back to the first slide, you're connecting to the Bango product, you're not connecting to content provider one. But content provider one, maybe your first launch, then two, then three, then four, and so on and so forth. And that's a really strong ethos I want to kind of get across for a second time, because I think that's hopefully a good message that the listeners and viewers of today will take away. So.
Yeah, so it's that kind of mentality that even if you just have the eyes and the sights on just one partner that you really want to get out to market because there is a desire and there's a need for that, usually a subscription service of some sort, which is like probably going to be streaming most likely. But it comes back to what the consumers are asking for and what the consumers are wanting. We do a lot of research in this at Bango, and it's that now breadth and depth of subscriptions ecosystem that it is now required. I mean, myself, I don't know about you, Dan. How many subscriptions do you have? I have 7, I think, 8 on the last count. I don't know how many.
Yeah, it must be in double figures or nearing it at least.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, that ability to kind of bring them all into one ecosystem is what consumers are looking for. So again, this is a great kind of opportunity to start and then kind of scale with Bango.
Yeah, the way I like to look at it in my head and to really try and simplify it is kind of like, as you scale, the technical effort doesn't have to scale with it. But often with the direct approach, as you scale, the technical effort has to scale with it. And if that's the kind of goal, then that's fine. But I think if I could scale and not have to scale technical complexity and effort, then I think that's definitely the route I would be going down for sure.
Because then it's cost as well, right? And the the
Absolutely,
maintenance of that, and
it's cost, it's focus. I mean, we're all, every company in the world is busy, and we all have focus, and you're just putting your focus in the right areas and getting the right companies to support you in expanding in key areas. So I think that's really important.
that's good. I think on the final point here, I think this again is solidifying the point, right? It's that ability to future-proof your bundling business and doing that kind of work at the start on the initial integration with Bango. You can save so much more time and resources in the future, can't you? And it's that ability to connect to the people who know what they're doing, right? We know what we're doing.
Yeah,
We've done this a number of times, and it's making sure that you're future-proofing your success. So I think this is a really good section. I think Dan.
absolutely. So we spoke a lot about bundling and multiple content providers, but I think the reality is, Ben, is we still have a good amount of resellers that want to use Bango to onboard one content provider. And whether that's their ultimate end goal or whether that's their gateway into launching multiples, I think I really want to get the message across that you don't just need to use Bango if you want to launch 15 or 10 or whatever. If you want to use Bango to launch one content provider, that's absolutely something we do today and is fairly common.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely a trend in the last year or year and a half, I would say, where we're seeing content providers, telcos wanting to launch many content providers from day one, and that's kind of what we'll be showing in the next couple of images.
So this one, so you on this particular slide, this is an example, isn't it, of a European telco. We can't name names as we know, but this is someone who has gone through a kind of a consultation process with Bango and kind of gone through what's their kind of roadmap, what's it going to look like over a 1, 3, 5 year process, and what needs to be done maybe from year 1 to enable then success for year 3, year 5. Do you want to give us a little bit more detail on this from your side, Dan?
Absolutely. So our product has evolved over the years based on the market needs, and I think one thing that is really Bango's strong point is we have a really strong grasp of what the market needs are and particularly what the content providers are expecting in terms of use case support, authentication support, etc. And what the temptation is as a reseller is on day one, you have one content provider in mind, but you think you might want to kind of expand into more. But the real temptation is you just onboard the use cases needed to support that one content provider. However, when you then want to onboard content provider 2, you then may need to expand your use case list to support that content provider. What we started to experiment with in the early part of 2024 with a particular European telco, and now have expanded beyond that, and it's working really well actually, is what we're calling kind of the DVM blueprint. And essentially what we're trying to say here is our product is a single interface but can support multiple use cases in the market. And even if your content provider number 1 doesn't need all the use cases Bango supports, we can use our experience to guide you into the kind of the top use cases you should support for the most market reach. And what that essentially means is when content provider 2 comes along, content provider 3 comes along, you're already ready. So there's no additional deep technical work required to launch content provider 2, content provider 3. Now, there's obviously configuration of offers and certain information you need to pass in to the API, but the fundamental core of what features you will need for the market are already implemented. And we really believe this massively enhances our customers' ability to scale at speed.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and important point to mention that it's that kind of using Bango as that kind of sounding board of strategy and what they're wanting to do. Because I think if we kind of know the plans that are in place, we can then shape the product and set it up in the best way possible, right? We've done this 200 times, so I think using that kind of knowledge and expertise to really pinpoint what the best route for this is. So.
Exactly. We don't use the term ecosystem lightly. I think ecosystem could be deemed as kind of like, well, what is an ecosystem in terms of this? But I think we generally do believe we have a strong ecosystem of product ability and company knowledge. And I think the combination of those two is a bit of a powerhouse in this space. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Great, yeah. So just to kind of summarize on kind of what we've kind of covered. So yeah, Bango is obviously the DVM, the product. Obviously, you've got the ability to speak to me through to any of our team, to Dan directly, connect with us on LinkedIn, and reach out if you've got any questions. You can also submit any questions in the chat. We're about to go into a live Q&A with Dan. I'm going to put him on the spot and see how he fares.
I'm ready.
But yeah, it's very much that connect once mentality, right? We're kind of simplifying the complexity of scale, right? And making sure that you're building your success by working with us and using our platform and the power that we've got in our platform or our product, may I say, and really make sure that it's work with us to make sure that connectivity is the most efficient way possible. We've got this standard. We say it's a standardized product. So as you saw the Continente and Telenet example, they're 2 different type of businesses. They're using the same APIs. The connectivity is the same for everyone. We've done that for the ability to for speed and scale. and we're constantly innovating, we're constantly improving. So this is something that, with a product, comparatively to a kind of a build your own or a custom build job, this is the major advantage, right? Once the product advances, that means your access to it advances, and new features will come out as all product kind of developments happen. So, right, I think it's time to get into the Q&A. Dan, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Righty-ho. Just a quick little note as well. You'll see a QR code that's popped up in the right side. Dan, if you want to give it a point. Look at
Just
that.
here.
Look at that.
That's
That is our
11th time I got it right.
Yeah, you nailed it this time.
Yeah.
So that is our sandbox access. So you can scan that, and you get access to the sandbox. So you can then fill in the form, have a little test, play with the APIs, send it to your technical team if you're not in that area. We do urge you to try that because it's a really good way to really test and prove how things kind of work. So yeah, I've got a question here around what's the hardest launch you've worked on and why? And obviously you don't have to name names because of confidentiality, but I think maybe that's a good question to start on.
Yeah, so I think there's not a particular project that comes to mind as the hardest, but there's definitely a particular category which comes to mind. And some of the hardest launches to work on are the ones where there's already been press releases and market launches of the launch. And we have to kind of work really tight deadlines, and you're kind of condensed in to what you can achieve and what you can offer. And I think in those times it's the hardest, but also the most rewarding, because the teams really have to come together to work hard and get the launch done. So I think, yeah, probably not the answer to the exact question, but hopefully a bit of a category.
That's good. It's a bit of a political answer, but I'll let you off. So good question here. So how has it evolved over the last 4 years? Obviously, you've been 12 years at Bango, right? So let's say just the last 4 years, and what patterns were common and now everyone kind of understands.
Yeah, good question. So I think if I was to look back 4 years ago, and maybe even more recently than that, I think a lot of the onboarding work we were doing was connecting partner A to partner B. And that's definitely how our customers saw Bango in the market, as kind of like an integration player. But I think in the last year, maybe up to year and a half, 2 years, we've definitely seen a massive shift in our partners using Bango as a product and connecting to the product, and then enabling content providers off the back of that connection. And I think it's more of a mindset shift than anything else. And I think definitely seeing a huge shift in customers seeing the true power of the DVM, not just using as a connection house, basically. And I think that's really exciting, because it's very rewarding for us to connect a partner and launch many partners off the back of that. So it's good to see.
And that's actually a great plug and a great kind of segue as well into the next Bytesize session that we're doing. So we're going to be bringing in Marissa, who's our Chief Product Officer. At the end of February, we're going to be doing a session on all the latest and greatest updates, product updates on the DVM, which we're very excited about to share with you guys. It's some pretty amazing, powerful stuff. Again, and that completely aligns to what you were just saying then, Dan, is using the product and not looking at it as an integration.
But that's going to be a great session, Ben, and it's taken all my power to not talk about some of the exciting stuff that's coming, and I'll make sure I let Marissa kind of share all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly. Another question: what are the requirements of being able to use the sandbox?
Yeah, good question. So essentially, you need to fill in the form on the developer portal. So there's some high-level information you need to read. You then need to tick the T's and C's box, and obviously for legal reasons, make sure you read the terms and conditions as well. And basically, that's it. It's pretty straightforward. just then start using the APIs based off the back of the developer portal. So we've tried to make it really, really easy, because there's no point having a really easy to use API if the way to try to use it is jumping through hoops, really difficult.
Yeah.
So we're maintaining our ethos throughout everything of simple, clean, and easy to use.
Good, excellent. Thank you for that. A question here around what's the longest amount of time the entire onboarding process for a new DVM partner has been? So we talked about the shortest, or with examples of shortest.
So I think it's probably,
or maybe in addition to that, what would make it a more longer process? What are the attributes, and how? Because I think if we reverse engineer that question into what enables it to be quicker, so what are the attributes that are needed from a partner to make it quicker?
So there's two key elements really that kind of, if you want to onboard quickly, there's two things that you should really be considering internally within your own kind of company. And the first one is making sure you have the right team available at the right time. That's often a big part of what holds up the project. For us is sometimes our partners don't have the right people available at the right time. And the other part is often testing. So a big way to mitigate kind of the longer testing cycles that a lot of our partners kind of need is making sure all the testing needs are shared ahead of time, not during the testing window. So we can try and make it as efficient as possible, because we appreciate that at Bango, we have our own frameworks and I guess sign-off procedures we need to follow, but we also appreciate our partners have exactly the same thing. And a big part of how we can make projects run as efficiently as possible is just being really transparent with each other at the start of the project, of saying, this is how Bango works, this is how you work. How do we make sure we can kind of make sure we work the best together as we can be? And it can be difficult. I think that's kind of where Bango hopefully steps in and shares some of our wisdom. But yeah, that's the two key points.
Well, Dan, I think we're pretty much on the half hour. Thank you very much for your time and effort into this session. I'm sure the audience have found this super useful. And if there's any other questions that come to mind after watching this, even on demand, if you watch this is obviously going to be recorded. Will be shared, and you can access this recording again. If you have any questions that you want to ask Dan directly, feel free to connect with him. Connect with me again on LinkedIn. No question is a stupid question, so we welcome anything through. And yeah, best of luck with all your until your 13th year, Dan.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's an exciting 2025, Ben. Honestly, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the end of February.